The morning sun was just coming up when Maya Rodriguez opened her eyes. She could hear her mother moving around in the kitchen, getting ready for work. Maya sat up in bed and looked at the small room she shared with her younger sister. The walls were thin and the paint was old, but her mother always kept it clean. Maya got dressed quickly. She put on her brother's old jacket because it was cold outside. The jacket was too big for her, but it was warm. She looked at herself in the small mirror on the wall. Her dark hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail. She picked up her backpack. It was old and had a small hole in the bottom, but her father had fixed it with safety pins. Maya didn't mind. She had more important things to think about. In the kitchen, her mother was making breakfast. Rosa Rodriguez had already been awake for an hour. She worked 2 jobs to help the family. During the day, she cleaned houses. At night, she cleaned offices in the city. Maya could see how tired her mother looked, but Rosa always smiled when she saw her daughter. "Good morning, mija," Rosa said in Spanish. She handed Maya a plate with eggs and tortillas. "Eat well. You have a big day at school." Maya sat down at the small table. Her father, Miguel, was already there drinking coffee. He worked in the fields picking vegetables. His hands were rough and dark from the sun. He didn't speak much English, but he always told Maya how proud he was of her. He said it in Spanish, touching her head gently. "You study hard today," he said. "You are smart." "You will do great things," Maya smiled at her parents. They worked so hard for her and her siblings. They had come to this country with nothing. They wanted their children to have a better life. Maya was 16 years old, and she had never gotten a grade lower than an A. She wanted to go to college. She wanted to be the first person in her family to graduate from a university. The bus ride to Lincoln High School took 30 minutes. Maya sat by the window and watched the neighborhoods change. First, she passed the small apartments where many immigrant families lived. Then she saw bigger houses with nice yards. By the time the bus reached the school, the houses were very large with fancy cars in the driveways. Maya walked into the school building. Lincoln High was a good school, but Maya often felt out of place. Many students wore expensive clothes and had new phones. Maya's phone was old and barely worked. Her clothes were clean but worn. She tried not to think about it too much. She was here to learn, not to compete with anyone. Her first class of the day was English with Mrs. Patricia Henderson. Maya both loved and feared this class. She loved English because she enjoyed reading and writing. Words made sense to her in a way that felt natural. But she feared Mrs. Henderson. There was something about the way the teacher looked at her that made Maya uncomfortable. Mrs. Henderson was a tall woman with blonde hair that she always wore in a perfect style. She had been teaching at Lincoln High for 20 years. Everyone said she was very strict but fair. Maya wasn't so sure about the fair part. As Maya walked into the classroom, Mrs. Henderson was writing on the board. Maya took her seat in the middle of the room. Her best friend Sarah Chen sat next to her. Sarah smiled and whispered hello. Sarah was one of the few people who made Maya feel welcome at this school. "Good morning, class," Mrs. Henderson said in a loud voice. She turned to face the students. Her eyes moved across the room and seemed to stop on Maya for just a moment longer than necessary. "Today we're going to discuss your next assignment. This will be a major part of your grade." Maya took out her notebook and pen. She always took careful notes. Mrs. Henderson began to explain the assignment. The students would write a personal essay about overcoming adversity. They would have 3 weeks to complete it. The essay had to be at least 5 pages long. "This essay should be meaningful," Mrs. Henderson said. "I want you to dig deep and think about real challenges you faced in your life. Not small problems, but true adversity, something that tested you and made you grow." Maya's mind was already thinking about what she could write. She had faced many challenges in her life. Being poor was hard. Watching her parents work so much was hard. Being different from most of the other students was hard. But Maya had always stayed quiet about these things. She didn't want anyone to feel sorry for her. Mrs. Henderson continued talking about the assignment. Then she said something that made Maya's stomach hurt. The teacher looked around the room and her eyes landed on Maya again. "I want to remind everyone that good grades come from hard work, not from excuses," Mrs. Henderson said. "Some students think they deserve special treatment because of their circumstances. But in this class, everyone is judged by the same standards. You earn your grade through quality work, nothing else." Maya felt her face get hot. She knew Mrs. Henderson was talking about her. It wasn't the first time the teacher had made comments like this. Last week, Maya had asked for an extension on an essay because she had to help her mother when she got sick. Mrs. Henderson had said no and made a comment about responsibility. Sarah noticed Maya's discomfort. She reached over and squeezed her friend's hand under the desk. Sarah had seen how Mrs. Henderson treated Maya differently. She had noticed it for months now. The class continued, and Mrs. Henderson handed out papers with more details about the assignment. Maya took the paper and read it carefully. The essay was due in 3 weeks. They would also have to read their essays out loud to the class. Maya's heart beat faster at that thought. She didn't like speaking in front of people. When the bell rang, most students rushed out of the classroom. Maya stayed behind to ask Mrs. Henderson a question about the assignment. She walked up to the teacher's desk slowly. "Mrs. Henderson," Maya said quietly, "I have a question about the essay." The teacher looked up from her papers. Her expression was cold. "What is it, Maya?" She pronounced Maya's name wrong, making it sound like Maya instead of Maya. Maya had corrected her many times, but Mrs. Henderson never seemed to remember. "I was wondering if we could write about any kind of adversity, or if there are specific topics you want us to avoid," Maya asked. Mrs. Henderson sighed like the question annoyed her. "The assignment is clear, Maya. Write about overcoming adversity. It's not complicated, unless you don't understand what adversity means." Maya felt small. "No, I understand. Thank you." She turned and walked out of the classroom quickly. Her eyes were starting to water, but she refused to cry. Sarah was waiting for her in the hallway. "Are you okay?" she asked. Maya nodded, but she wasn't really okay. She was tired of feeling like she didn't belong. She was tired of Mrs. Henderson's comments and cold looks, but she didn't know what to do about it. She was just a student. Mrs. Henderson was a powerful teacher who controlled her grades and her future. "Come on," Sarah said, linking her arm through Maya's. "Let's get to our next class. Don't let her get to you." But it was too late. Mrs. Henderson had already gotten to Maya. As she walked down the hallway, Maya made a decision. She would write the best essay of her life for this assignment. She would prove that she deserved to be here, that she was just as good as any other student, maybe even better. The next 3 weeks were hard for Maya. She worked on her essay every day, but she also noticed more and more problems in Mrs. Henderson's class. Things she had tried to ignore before became impossible to overlook. It was like someone had opened her eyes to things that had always been there. Maya had written her first draft of the essay. She wrote about growing up poor and how hard her parents worked. She wrote about learning to be grateful for small things and finding strength in her family's love. She thought it was good writing. She had checked her spelling and grammar 3 times. When Mrs. Henderson returned the draft with comments, Maya's heart sank. The paper was covered in red marks. At the top, Mrs. Henderson had written a grade, C-. Below that, she had written a note. "This feels too emotional. Essays should be objective and analytical. Try to be less personal and more academic." Maya stared at the paper in confusion. How could a personal essay be less personal? That didn't make any sense. She looked around the classroom. Other students were getting their papers back too. She saw a girl named Jennifer smiling at her paper. Jennifer was sitting 2 rows away. After class, Maya walked over to Sarah. "What did you get on your draft?" Maya asked quietly. Sarah showed her paper. She had gotten a B+. Sarah's essay was about overcoming her fear of public speaking. It was well written, but Sarah admitted she had only spent 2 days on it. Maya had spent a whole week on hers. "This doesn't make sense," Maya said. "My essay has better vocabulary and structure than yours." "No offense. None taken," Sarah said. "You're right. Your essay is really good. I read it, remember? Something's wrong here." That afternoon, Maya stayed after class again. Several other students had the same idea. They all wanted to ask Mrs. Henderson questions about their grades. Maya waited her turn. When the other students left, she approached the teacher's desk. "Mrs. Henderson, I'm confused about your comments," Maya said. She tried to keep her voice steady and polite. "You said the essay should be less personal, but the assignment is to write a personal essay about adversity. I don't understand how to make it less personal." Mrs. Henderson barely looked up from her computer. "Maya, you need to understand the difference between sharing an experience and analyzing it. Your writing is too emotional. You're telling me a sad story, but you're not showing me what you learned in an academic way. Can you give me an example of what you mean?" Maya asked. I want to improve. Mrs. Henderson finally looked at her. The expression on her face was impatient. I don't have time to teach you basic writing skills that you should have learned years ago. Perhaps advanced English isn't the right fit for you. There's no shame in taking regular English instead. The words hit Maya like a punch. Advanced English was required for the college track. If she dropped down to regular English, her chances of getting into a good university would be hurt badly. And she knew her writing skills were strong. She had won writing contests in middle school. I'll work harder, Maya said quietly. She left the classroom feeling confused and hurt. Over the next week, Maya paid closer attention to how Mrs. Henderson treated different students. What she saw made her stomach turn. The teacher called on Maya only when she didn't raise her hand. When Maya did raise her hand, Mrs. Henderson often ignored her and called on someone else. Mrs. Henderson also had a way of talking to Maya that was different from how she talked to other students. Her voice was colder. Her smile disappeared, and she kept mispronouncing Maya's name, even though Maya had corrected her at least 10 times. Sarah noticed it too. They started keeping track. Sarah would write down each time Mrs. Henderson did something that seemed unfair. By the end of the week, they had a long list. One day, Mrs. Henderson was handing back another assignment. It was an analysis of the book To Kill a Mockingbird that they had been reading in class. Maya had loved this book. It was about racism and injustice in the American South. She had spent hours on her analysis, connecting the book's themes to issues that still existed today. When Mrs. Henderson placed Maya's paper on her desk, Maya saw the grade before she saw anything else. C-. Again, she felt sick. Below the grade, Mrs. Henderson had written, "Too emotional. Lacks objectivity. You're projecting modern issues onto a historical text inappropriately." Maya's hands shook as she read the comments. She had used facts and quotes from the book to support every point. How was that too emotional? She looked over at Jennifer's paper. Jennifer had left it on her desk while she went to sharpen her pencil. Maya could see the grade, a-. After class, Maya asked Jennifer if she could read her essay. Jennifer agreed, proud to share her work. Maya read it carefully. Jennifer's essay was shorter than hers. It had fewer examples from the book. Some of the grammar wasn't quite right. But Jennifer had gotten an A- and Maya had gotten a C-. "This is wrong," Sarah said when Maya showed her both essays. "Your essay is way better. Look at all the evidence you used. Look at how you explained each point." Jennifer barely scratched the surface. "What should I do?" Maya asked. She felt tears starting to form in her eyes. "If I complain, she might make it worse. She controls my grades, Sarah. She can keep me from going to college." Sarah put her arm around her friend. "I don't know, but this isn't fair. This is discrimination, Maya. You have to see that now." Maya did see it. She had been trying to tell herself that maybe Mrs. Henderson was just strict. Maybe Maya really wasn't good enough. But seeing Jennifer's essay compared to hers made the truth impossible to ignore. Mrs. Henderson was treating her differently because of who she was. Because of her last name. Because of her old clothes and worn backpack. Because she was different from most of the other students at Lincoln High. That night, Maya couldn't eat dinner. Her mother noticed right away. Rosa sat down next to her daughter at the kitchen table. "What's wrong, mija?" she asked in Spanish. Maya tried to hold it together, but she couldn't. The tears came flooding out. She told her mother everything. About the unfair grades. About Mrs. Henderson's cold treatment. About feeling invisible and unwanted in her own classroom. Rosa held her daughter tight. She smoothed Maya's hair and let her cry. Miguel came in from the other room. When he saw his daughter crying, his face filled with pain. He sat down on Maya's other side. "You are so smart," Rosa said firmly. "You work harder than anyone I know. This teacher, she doesn't see you. She doesn't see your value, but that doesn't mean you don't have value. Do you understand?" Maya nodded against her mother's shoulder. Miguel spoke in Spanish, his voice rough with emotion. "We didn't leave our home and work this hard so that someone could make you feel small. You are not small, Maya, you are strong. You come from strong people." Rosa pulled back and looked at her daughter's face. "You have a voice, Mija. Sometimes we have to use our voice even when we're scared. Your story deserves to be heard." That night, Maya lay in bed thinking about her mother's words. She thought about the personal essay assignment that was due soon. She had been planning to write about something safe, something that wouldn't upset anyone, but maybe it was time to write about the truth. The next morning, Maya woke up with a new idea forming in her mind. What if she wrote her personal essay about the real adversity she was facing? What if she wrote about Mrs. Henderson and how she had been treated? It was risky. Mrs. Henderson would be the one grading the essay. She could fail Maya out of spite. But Maya was tired of being silent. She was tired of pretending everything was okay when it wasn't. At lunch that day, Maya told Sarah about her idea. Sarah's eyes got wide. Are you serious? Maya, that's really brave, but it's also really dangerous. She could destroy your grade. She could ruin your chances at college. I know, Maya said. But if I don't say something, who will? How many other students has she treated this way? How many more will she treat like this in the future? Sarah was quiet for a moment. Then she nodded. Okay, if you're going to do this, I'm going to help you. We'll document everything. We'll make sure your essay is perfect so she can't say it's poorly written. And Maya, I'm really proud of you. Maya smiled for the first time in days. She was scared, but she was also determined. She had found her topic for the personal essay. She would write about being the invisible student in Mrs. Henderson's classroom. She would write about discrimination and prejudice. She would write her truth even if it cost her everything. Maya started writing her essay that same evening. She sat at the small desk in the corner of her bedroom with an old lamp that flickered sometimes. Her younger sister was already asleep in the bed they shared. Maya opened her notebook and stared at the blank page. Where should she start? There were so many moments to choose from. So many times when Mrs. Henderson had made her feel small or unwelcome. Maya picked up her pen and began to write. The words came slowly at first, but then faster and faster. She wrote about the first day of school when Mrs. Henderson had mispronounced her name. She wrote about how the teacher's eyes always seemed cold when they looked at her. She wrote about the unfair grades and the dismissive comments. But she also wrote about more than just Mrs. Henderson. She wrote about being poor in a rich school. She wrote about wearing her brother's old jacket and carrying a backpack held together with safety pins. Maya wrote about her parents, too. She described her mother's tired eyes and rough hands from cleaning houses all day. She wrote about her father coming home from the fields with dirt under his fingernails and sunburn on his neck. She wrote about how they barely spoke English but told her every day that education was the key to a better life. The essay was called The Invisible Student. When the person grading your future can't see your worth, Maya worked on it every night for 2 weeks. She wrote and rewrote sentences until they were perfect. She checked every word for spelling. She made sure her grammar was flawless. This essay had to be so good that Mrs. Henderson couldn't find any excuse to give it a bad grade based on the writing itself. Sarah helped her. They met at the library after school and Sarah read each draft carefully. Sometimes Sarah cried while reading it. This is powerful, Maya, she said. This is really, really powerful. But are you sure you want to submit this? Once you turn it in, you can't take it back. Maya was sure. Well, mostly sure. Sometimes late at night, she would lie awake feeling scared. What if Mrs. Henderson failed her? What if she got in trouble? What if the other teachers didn't believe her? But then she would think about her mother's words. You have a voice, Mia. Your story deserves to be heard. During these 2 weeks, things got worse in Mrs. Henderson's class. Maya had to give a presentation about a poem they had studied. She had practiced for hours. Her presentation was organized and clear. She spoke about the themes and imagery in the poem. When she finished, a few students even clapped quietly. Mrs. Henderson gave her a B-. When a white student named Brad gave his presentation the next day, stumbling over his words and forgetting several points, Mrs. Henderson gave him an A-. She smiled at him and said, "Good effort, Brad. I can see you really tried." Maya felt anger burning in her chest. She looked at Sarah, who shook her head in disbelief. After class, 3 other students came up to Maya. One was a boy named Marcus, who was black. Another was a girl named Aisha, who wore a hijab. The third was a student named Carlos. "We saw what happened," Marcus said quietly. "Your presentation was way better than Brad's. This isn't right." "It's been happening all year," Aisha added. "She treats some of us differently than others. We've all noticed it." Maya realized she wasn't alone. Mrs. Henderson's prejudice affected more students than just her. That night, Maya added a section to her essay about how discrimination hurts not just one person, but creates an environment where some students feel valued and others feel worthless. The day before the essay was due, Maya had a moment of panic. She was in the bathroom at school, looking at herself in the mirror, Her hands were shaking. She could submit a different essay. She could write something safe about overcoming her fear of speaking English when she first started school. She could avoid all this trouble, but then she remembered something her father had said. He had been talking about his work in the fields. "Sometimes the work is so hard I want to quit," he had said in Spanish. "My back hurts, my hands hurt, the sun is too hot. But I think about you kids and I keep going. Because some things are worth fighting for. Maya's education was worth fighting for. Her dignity was worth fighting for." She took a deep breath and made her final decision. She would submit the essay exactly as she had written it. That evening at dinner, Maya told her parents what she had done. She explained that her essay was about Mrs. Henderson and the unfair treatment. She told them that she would have to read it out loud in class and that Mrs. Henderson would be there listening. Her mother's face showed worry and pride at the same time. "This could be hard for you, Mija," Rosa said. "Are you ready for that?" "I think so," Maya said. "I'm scared, but I'm also tired of being quiet." Miguel reached across the table and took his daughter's hand. His palm was rough and calloused. "You are brave," he said in Spanish. "Braver than me. I'm proud of you." Maya felt tears in her eyes, but they were different tears than before. These weren't tears of sadness or frustration. These were tears of determination. The next morning, Maya walked into Mrs. Henderson's classroom with her essay in her backpack. Today was the day they had to turn in their final papers. Tomorrow they would start reading them out loud. Mrs. Henderson had explained that students would volunteer to read over the next week, and everyone had to present before the end of the semester. Mrs. Henderson collected the essays in a folder. When she took Maya's paper, she barely glanced at it. Maya watched as the teacher placed her essay in the middle of the stack. Mrs. Henderson had no idea what she was about to read. That night, Maya couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about what would happen when Mrs. Henderson read the essay. Would she call Maya's parents? Would she send Maya to the principal's office? Would she fail her immediately? The possibilities spun through Maya's mind like a scary movie. The next day in class, Mrs. Henderson didn't look at Maya any differently. Maybe she hadn't read the essays yet. Students started volunteering to read their papers out loud. Jennifer went first. She read an essay about overcoming her fear of not making the cheerleading squad. It was fine, but not very deep. Mrs. Henderson smiled and clapped when she finished. Brad read his essay about dealing with his parents' divorce. It was actually quite good, and Maya felt sorry for what he had gone through. Mrs. Henderson gave him lots of praise and said his essay showed real maturity and insight. Over the next few days, more students presented. Maya didn't volunteer. She wanted to wait and see if Mrs. Henderson said anything about her essay first. But the teacher acted completely normal toward her. Cold and dismissive as always, but not angry. Maybe she hadn't read Maya's essay yet. On Friday afternoon, Sarah pulled Maya aside in the hallway. "Have you heard anything from Mrs. Henderson about your essay?" she asked. "No, nothing," Maya said. "Maybe she hasn't read it yet. Or maybe she read it and is planning what to do." "When are you going to present it?" Sarah asked. "I don't know." "I'm terrified," Maya admitted. "Once I read it out loud, everyone will know. Everyone will hear what I've been going through. What if they don't believe me? What if they think I'm just making excuses?" Sarah grabbed both of Maya's hands. "Listen to me. Your essay is true. It's honest. It's important. And you're not doing this just for yourself. You're doing it for Marcus and Aisha and Carlos and every other student who's been treated unfairly. You're doing it because it's right." Maya nodded. Sarah was correct. This was bigger than just her own grades or her own feelings. This was about standing up against something wrong. That weekend, Maya practiced reading her essay out loud in her room. Her voice shook at first, but she kept practicing. She read it to her mother, who cried and hugged her tight. She read it to her father, who didn't understand all the English words but understood enough to feel proud and sad at the same time. By Sunday night, Maya had made her decision. On Monday, she would volunteer to read her essay. She couldn't wait any longer. The fear was eating at her, and she needed to just do it before she lost her courage completely. Monday morning came too fast. Maya barely ate breakfast. Her stomach felt like it was full of rocks. On the bus ride to school, she stared out the window and tried to calm her breathing. She had her essay in her backpack. She had practiced reading it 100 times. She was as ready as she would ever be. When she walked into Mrs. Henderson's classroom, Maya's heart was pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. She took her seat next to Sarah, who squeezed her arm supportively. Mrs. Henderson was at the front of the room writing on the board. "Good morning, class," Mrs. Henderson said. "Today we'll continue with our essay presentations. Who would like to go first?" The room was quiet. No one raised their hand. Maya's mouth was dry. Her hands were sweating. This was it. This was the moment. She thought about her parents and their sacrifices. She thought about Marcus and Aisha and Carlos. She thought about her own voice and her own story. Maya raised her hand. Mrs. Henderson looked surprised. "Maya, you're volunteering to present?" "Yes," Maya said. Her voice came out stronger than she expected. "I'm ready to read my essay." "All right then," Mrs. Henderson said. She gestured to the front of the room. "Come on up." Maya stood up from her desk. Her legs felt shaky, but they carried her to the front of the classroom. She turned to face her classmates. 24 pairs of eyes looked back at her. Sarah gave her an encouraging smile. Maya took out her essay and held it in her trembling hands. Maya stood at the front of the classroom holding her essay. She looked down at the first page and saw her own handwriting. The title stared back at her. The Invisible Student. When the Person. Grading your future can't see your worth. Her heart was beating so fast she thought everyone could hear it. She glanced at Mrs. Henderson. The teacher was sitting at her desk in the back corner of the room. She had a pen in her hand, ready to take notes like she did for all the presentations. Mrs. Henderson looked bored, like she had already heard 20 essays and didn't expect anything interesting from Maya. Maya took a deep breath. This was it. Once she started reading, there was no going back. She thought about her mother's words one more time. "You have a voice, mija." Yes, she did. And today she would use it. "My essay is called The Invisible Student," Maya began. Her voice was quiet and shaky. She cleared her throat and started again, louder this time. "The invisible student. When the person grading your future can't see your worth." She began to read. "Every morning, I wake up in a small bedroom that I share with my younger sister. The walls are thin and the paint is old, but my mother keeps it clean. I put on my brother's jacket because it's the warmest one we have. I pick up my backpack that's held together with safety pins, and I go to school hoping that today will be the day when someone finally sees me." Maya's voice grew stronger as she continued. She read about coming to Lincoln High School from a poor neighborhood. She described feeling out of place among students with expensive clothes and new phones. She talked about working hard to maintain straight A's because education was her family's only hope for a better future. Then she got to the hard part. The part about Mrs. Henderson. "But there's one place where I feel most invisible," Maya read, "and that place is in my English class. I have a teacher who looks at me with cold eyes. A teacher who mispronounces my name even though I've corrected her many times. A teacher who seems to grade my work differently than she grades other students' work." Maya heard someone gasp quietly. She didn't look up. She kept reading. She had to get through this. She described the unfair grades in detail. She talked about how her analysis of To Kill a Mockingbird received a C- while a weaker essay from another student got an A-. She explained how her presentations were marked down, while similar presentations from white students received high praise. She listed dates and specific examples. "I started to notice a pattern," Maya read. "My teacher only calls on me when I don't raise my hand. When I do raise my hand, she ignores me. Her voice is cold when she speaks to me, but warm when she speaks to other students. She suggested I drop down to regular English, saying that advanced English might not be the right fit for me. But I know my writing is strong. I've won writing contests. I work harder than almost anyone in that class." The classroom was completely silent now. Maya could feel everyone's attention on her. She glanced up briefly and saw that several students were leaning forward in their seats. Sarah had tears in her eyes. Even students who usually didn't pay attention were listening. Maya continued reading. She wrote about the day she compared her essay with Jennifer's and realized that the grading wasn't about quality at all. She described staying after class to ask for help and being dismissed. She talked about the comments on her papers calling her work too emotional when the assignment was to write a personal essay. "I started to understand something painful," Maya read, her voice thick with emotion now. "The person who grades my papers, who controls my future, who determines whether I can go to college, this person doesn't see my worth. She doesn't see how hard I work. She doesn't see my intelligence or my potential. What does she see? My last name? My old clothes? My brown skin? I don't know exactly, but I know she doesn't see me. Maya had to pause and take a breath. Her hands were shaking so much the paper rustled. She heard sniffling in the room. When she looked up, she saw that at least 5 students were crying quietly. Marcus, the black student who had spoken to her before, was wiping his eyes. Aisha had her hand over her mouth. Maya found Mrs. Henderson in the back of the room. The teacher's face had gone pale. She was sitting very still, her pen frozen in the air. Their eyes met for just a second, and Maya saw something in Mrs. Henderson's expression. Shock, shame, anger, Maya couldn't tell. She looked back down at her essay and kept reading. She read the section about her parents. This was the part that always made her cry when she practiced at home, and it was hard to get through now. My mother cleans houses during the day and offices at night, Maya read, her voice breaking. Her hands are rough and red from chemicals. She comes home so tired that sometimes she falls asleep at the dinner table. But she always wakes up to help me with my homework, even though she doesn't speak much English. Tears were rolling down Maya's cheeks now, but she kept reading. My father works in the fields picking vegetables. His back is bent from bending over crops all day. His hands are dark and weathered from the sun. He leaves before sunrise and comes home after dark. On weekends, he works extra hours. He does this so that I can have school supplies and a place to study. He does this so that I can have a future he never had. Maya looked up again. Now more than half the class was crying. Jennifer, the girl with the A- essay, had tears streaming down her face. Brad was rubbing his eyes. Even some of the tough boys in the back row looked emotional. My parents left their home country with nothing, Maya continued. They came here believing in the American dream. They believed that if they worked hard, their children could succeed. They believed that education would be the door to opportunity. They believed that in school I would be judged by my abilities, not by my address or my last name or the color of my skin. Maya's voice grew stronger again, powered by emotion. But what do I tell my parents when I come home with another low grade on an essay I spent hours perfecting? What do I tell them when I'm ignored in class even though I know the answers? What do I tell them when I'm told that advanced English might not be the right fit for me? How do I explain that their sacrifices aren't enough because someone in power has already decided I don't belong? The room was so quiet that Maya could hear people breathing. She turned to the final page of her essay. This was her conclusion, the part where she had to be most careful with her words. She had revised this section many times. I'm writing this essay because the assignment was to write about overcoming adversity, and this is my adversity. Not poverty, although that's hard. Not being different, although that's lonely. My adversity is being invisible to the person who controls my future. My adversity is working twice as hard for half the recognition. My adversity is sitting in a classroom every day knowing that I'm not seen, not heard, not valued. Maya paused and looked directly at Mrs. Henderson. The teacher was staring at her with a strange expression. Her face was red and her eyes looked wet. But I'm not writing this essay just to complain, Maya read, her voice steady and clear now. I'm writing it because I believe in the power of truth. I'm writing it because staying silent makes me complicit in my own invisibility. I'm writing it because maybe, just maybe, if I speak up, others who feel invisible will find their voices too. She read the final paragraph. I don't know what will happen after I read this essay. Maybe my grade will get worse. Maybe I'll face consequences. Maybe nothing will change at all. But I do know one thing, I'm not invisible. I am Maya Rodriguez. I am the daughter of immigrants who sacrifice everything for their children. I am a student who works harder than almost anyone in this school. I am intelligent, capable, and deserving of respect, and I have a voice. Today I'm using it. Maya finished reading and looked up. The silence in the room was complete. Then suddenly someone started clapping. It was Sarah. She stood up from her desk, still crying, and clapped loudly. Then Marcus stood up and started clapping too. Then Aisha. Then Carlos. Then Jennifer. Within seconds, almost the entire class was standing and applauding. Some students were crying openly now. Others were nodding their heads. A few boys were wiping their eyes and trying to hide it. Maya stood at the front of the room, overwhelmed. She hadn't expected this. She thought maybe people would be uncomfortable or wouldn't believe her. But instead, they were standing for her. They were supporting her. Sarah rushed forward and hugged Maya tightly. That was incredible, she whispered. That was so brave. Other students came up too. Marcus shook her hand. Aisha hugged her. Jennifer apologized through tears, saying she never realized what had been happening. Even Brad came up and said, "That took guts. I'm sorry you've been going through that." Maya looked toward the back of the room. Mrs. Henderson's desk was empty. The teacher had left the classroom while everyone was applauding. Her gradebook and papers were still there, but Mrs. Henderson was gone. The classroom was still buzzing with noise and emotion when the bell rang. Students were talking to each other in small groups. Some were still crying. Others were angry, saying they had noticed Mrs. Henderson's unfair treatment too but hadn't known what to do about it. Maya gathered her things slowly. She felt strange, like she was in a dream. She had actually done it. She had read her essay out loud. She had told the truth in front of everyone. But now what? Mrs. Henderson had left the room without saying a word. Where did she go? What was going to happen next? "Maya, you need to come with me." A voice came from the doorway. It was Mr. Wilson, one of the assistant principals. His face looked serious but not angry. "Bring your things." Maya's stomach dropped. This was it. She was in trouble. She looked at Sarah, who squeezed her hand. "It'll be okay," Sarah whispered, but she looked worried. Maya followed Mr. Wilson down the hallway. Other students stared as they passed. Word was already spreading about what had happened in Mrs. Henderson's class. Maya heard whispers as she walked by. "That's the girl who called out Mrs. Henderson. Did you hear what she said in her essay?" I heard Mrs. Henderson left the room crying. They walked to the main office. Mr. Wilson opened the door to a conference room. "Wait here, please," he said. His voice wasn't mean, but it wasn't friendly either. "Principal Johnson will be with you shortly." Maya sat down in one of the chairs around a big table. The room was cold and quiet. She looked at the clock on the wall. It was only 10 in the morning. Her parents were both at work. She had her phone in her pocket, but she didn't know if she should call them yet. Maybe she should wait to see what the principal said first. She waited for 20 minutes. Each minute felt like an hour. Maya's mind raced with possibilities. Would she be expelled? Would they say she was lying? Would Mrs. Henderson deny everything? Maybe this had been a huge mistake. Maybe she should have just stayed quiet and dealt with the unfair grades. Finally, the door opened. Principal Johnson walked in. He was a tall man with gray hair and glasses. Behind him came Mrs. Henderson. The teacher's eyes were red and puffy like she had been crying. She didn't look at Maya. Behind them came another woman Maya didn't recognize. "Maya, this is Ms. Chen, our school counselor," Principal Johnson said. He sat down across from Maya. Mrs. Henderson sat next to him, staring at the table. Ms. Chen sat at the end of the table between them. "Maya," Principal Johnson began. His voice was careful and measured. "I need you to understand that what happened this morning is very serious. Making accusations against a teacher is a very serious matter." Maya felt her throat tighten. She nodded but didn't speak. "Mrs. Henderson came to my office very upset. She told me about your essay. I need to ask you some questions, and I need you to be completely honest with me. Do you understand?" "Yes, sir," Maya said quietly. "Did you write that essay yourself? Did anyone help you write it or tell you what to say?" "I wrote it myself," Maya said. "My friend Sarah helped me check for grammar mistakes, but the words are all mine." "Everything I said is true." Principal Johnson nodded. He opened a folder and took out some papers. "Mrs. Henderson has been a teacher at this school for 20 years. She's never had a complaint like this before. These are very serious allegations you've made. Discrimination, prejudice, unfair grading." Maya's heart was pounding. Mrs. Henderson finally looked up. Her face was streaked with tears. "I never meant to hurt you," she said, her voice shaking. "I never thought about it like that. I was just trying to maintain high standards." "High standards for who?" Maya asked, finding her courage. "My essay on To Kill a Mockingbird was better than Jennifer's. I used more examples, better analysis, clearer writing. But you got an A- and I got a C-. How is that fair?" "Jennifer has always been a strong student," Mrs. Henderson started to say. "So have I." Maya's voice rose. "I've had straight A's since middle school. I work harder than almost anyone. But you told me that advanced English might not be the right fit for me. You said I should drop down. Why? Because of my writing skills?" "No, because of something else." The room went quiet. Principal Johnson was looking at Mrs. Henderson now. "Is this true? Did you suggest Maya drop down to regular English?" Mrs. Henderson's face crumpled. I didn't mean..." She put her face in her hands and started crying harder. Ms. Chen, the counselor, spoke up. Her voice was gentle. Mrs. Henderson, I think you need to take some time to think about what Maya has shared. This is clearly affecting her education and her well-being. We need to take this seriously. Principal Johnson looked at Maya. I want you to know that I take these concerns very seriously. I'm going to need some time to investigate. I'll need to look at your grades and compare them to other students. I'll need to talk to other people in your class. Can you give me the names of students who might have observed what you're talking about? Marcus Williams, Maya said. Aisha Rahman, Carlos Gutierrez. They've all noticed it too. And Sarah Chen has been documenting things for weeks. Principal Johnson wrote down the names. Okay, I'm going to talk to all of them. In the meantime, Mrs. Henderson will not be your teacher. We're going to arrange for you to complete the rest of the semester with Mr. Patterson. He teaches the other advanced English section. Wait, Mrs. Henderson said suddenly. She looked at Maya with red, swollen eyes. I'm sorry. Maya, I'm so sorry. You're right. I didn't see it before, but you're right. Everyone stared at Mrs. Henderson. New tears were running down her face. I've been teaching for 20 years, she continued, her voice breaking. I always thought I was fair. I thought I treated everyone the same. But listening to your essay today, hearing the specific examples, seeing the pain in your face, I realized something terrible. I have biases I didn't even know I had. She wiped her eyes with a tissue. When you turned in papers, I had lower expectations for you. I told myself I was maintaining high standards, but I wasn't applying those standards equally. When Jennifer wrote something good, I saw potential. When you wrote something good, I looked for problems. I didn't do it on purpose, but that doesn't make it okay. Maya didn't know what to say. She had never expected Mrs. Henderson to admit anything. I can't undo what I've done, Mrs. Henderson said. I can't give you back the confidence I took away or the time you wasted doubting yourself. But I can tell you that you were right to speak up. You were right to use your voice. And I'm going to do better. I have to do better. Principal Johnson looked surprised too. Mrs. Henderson, I appreciate your honesty. But we still need to complete a full investigation, and there need to be consequences for what's happened here. I understand, Mrs. Henderson said. I'm prepared to face whatever consequences are appropriate. But first I need to make something clear to Maya. She turned to face her directly. Your essay was brilliant. Your analysis of To Kill a Mockingbird was the best in the class. Your writing is exceptional. You deserve to be in advanced English. You deserve to go to a top college. And any teacher who can't see that is failing at their job. Maya felt tears starting to form in her own eyes now. She had wanted Mrs. Henderson to admit the truth. But she hadn't expected this level of honesty. She hadn't expected an actual apology. I want to read your essay to the other teachers, Mrs. Henderson continued, with your permission. They need to hear this. We all need to look at our own biases and do better. Principal Johnson looked at Maya. That's up to you, Maya. This is your story. You get to decide who hears it. Maya thought for a moment. She had been so scared to use her voice, but now that she had, maybe it could help create real change. Okay, she said. You can share it. If it helps other students like me, then yes. The meeting continued for another 30 minutes. Principal Johnson explained that there would be a full investigation. Mrs. Henderson would be required to undergo training on cultural competency and unconscious bias. She would not teach advanced classes for the rest of the semester. The school would also review her grading practices from the entire year. What about my grades? Maya asked. The unfair ones from earlier in the semester? We'll review all of your work, Principal Johnson said. If the investigation shows that your grades were unfair, they will be corrected. I can promise you that. When the meeting finally ended, Maya walked out of the conference room feeling exhausted but also lighter somehow. She had spoken her truth and people had listened. Mrs. Henderson had admitted she was wrong. There would be consequences and changes. Sarah was waiting for her in the hallway. Are you okay? What happened? She asked. Maya told her everything. Sarah hugged her tight. You did it, she said. You actually did it. You changed things. That night at dinner, Maya told her parents everything. Her mother cried and held her hand. Her father kept saying how proud he was. They couldn't believe that the teacher had actually apologized and admitted she was wrong. You were so brave, Mija, her mother said. You stood up for yourself when you were scared. That's the hardest kind of bravery. But Maya knew the story wasn't over yet. Principal Johnson still needed to complete his investigation. Other students would need to be interviewed, and Maya would need to adjust to a new teacher in the middle of the semester. There was still a long way to go. The next few weeks were strange for Maya. She moved to Mr. Patterson's advanced English class, and the difference was immediate. Mr. Patterson greeted her warmly on her first day. He pronounced her name correctly. When she raised her hand, he called on her. When she turned in her first essay, he gave her an A and wrote encouraging comments in the margins. "This is excellent work, Maya," Mr. Patterson said after class one day. "Your analysis is sophisticated and your writing is clear. Have you thought about entering some writing competitions?" Maya almost cried right there. These were the words she had been waiting to hear for months. Words that recognized her abilities and encouraged her potential. It felt like being seen for the first time. Meanwhile, Principal Johnson continued his investigation. He interviewed Marcus, Aisha, Carlos, and Sarah. He talked to other students in Mrs. Henderson's class. He reviewed Mrs. Henderson's gradebook and compared Maya's work to other students' work. Every piece of evidence supported what Maya had said in her essay. One afternoon, Maya was called back to Principal Johnson's office. This time, Mrs. Henderson wasn't there. It was just the principal, Ms. Chen, the counselor, and a woman Maya didn't recognize. "Maya, this is Dr. Rivera from the district office," Principal Johnson said. "She's here because your essay has raised some important questions that go beyond just our school." Dr. Rivera smiled at Maya. She was a Latina woman with kind eyes. "Maya, I want to thank you for your bravery. After reviewing the situation, we've decided to make some significant changes. First, your grades will be corrected. We reviewed all your work from Mrs. Henderson's class, and you should have had A's on most assignments. Your transcript will be updated." Maya felt relief wash over her. Her grades would be fixed. Her college applications wouldn't be hurt by the unfair marks. "Second," Dr. Rivera continued, "we're implementing new training for all teachers in the district, training on unconscious bias, cultural competency, and fair grading practices. Mrs. Henderson has volunteered to help develop this training. She wants to use her experience to help other teachers avoid making the same mistakes." "Really?" Maya asked, surprised. Principal Johnson nodded. "Mrs. Henderson has been meeting with diversity consultants and doing a lot of personal work. She realizes that good intentions aren't enough. She needs to actively work against her biases." "There's something else," Dr. Rivera said. She pulled out a paper from her folder. "Your essay was so powerful that Ms. Chen shared it with me with your permission. I shared it with some colleagues. Maya, we'd like to submit your essay to a regional writing competition. The theme this year is social justice. We think you have a real chance of winning." Maya's eyes widened. "A writing competition?" "Yes, the first prize includes a $5,000 scholarship," Dr. Rivera said. "But more importantly, the winning essays are published and shared with educators across the state. Your voice could reach thousands of teachers and help create real change." Maya couldn't believe what she was hearing. What started as a scary decision to tell her truth was turning into something much bigger. "I'd like that," Maya said. "If my story can help others, then yes." Over the next month, Maya worked with Mr. Patterson to polish her essay for the competition. They refined some sections and strengthened her arguments. Mr. Patterson was amazed by her writing skills. "You're a natural writer, Maya," he said. "Have you thought about studying journalism or creative writing in college?" Maya had thought about it. She loved writing. She loved telling stories. And now she understood the power that words could have to change things. The essay was submitted to the competition in March. Maya tried not to think about it too much. She focused on her other classes and spent time with Sarah and her new friends from English class. Marcus, Aisha, and Carlos had all become closer to her after the essay incident. They formed a small group that met at lunch to talk about their experiences as students of color at Lincoln High. One day in April, Maya was in Mr. Patterson's class when someone knocked on the door. It was Principal Johnson, and he was smiling. "Maya, can you come with me for a moment?" he asked. Maya's heart jumped. Was something wrong? But Principal Johnson was smiling, so maybe it was good news. They walked to the principal's office, and when they got there, Maya saw her parents sitting in chairs. Her mother was wearing her cleaning uniform because she had come straight from work. Her father had dirt on his work pants from the fields. They both looked confused and worried. "Mama." "Papa, what's wrong?" Maya asked in Spanish. "Nothing's wrong, mija," her mother said. "The principal called us to come. We don't know why." Principal Johnson gestured for everyone to sit. Dr. Rivera was there too, and she was holding something in her hand. "I have some very good news," Dr. Rivera said, smiling widely. "Maya, your essay won first place in the regional writing competition," Maya gasped. Her mother grabbed her hand. Her father looked confused because he didn't understand all the English words, so Maya quickly translated to Spanish. When he understood, his eyes filled with tears. "That's a $5,000 scholarship," Dr. Rivera continued. "But there's more. The judges were so impressed with your essay that they've submitted it to a national competition. And Maya, some college recruiters have already reached out after reading your work. They want to talk to you about their schools." Maya couldn't speak. She just sat there with tears running down her face. Her mother was crying too, hugging her daughter tight. Her father kept wiping his eyes and saying in Spanish, "I'm so proud. I'm so proud." "Your story matters, Maya," Principal Johnson said. "What you did took tremendous courage. You not only stood up for yourself, but you've helped create change for other students. We've already seen a difference in how teachers interact with students. They're more aware, more careful, more fair." The news spread through the school quickly. Students came up to Maya in the hallways to congratulate her. Even students she didn't know smiled at her and said they had heard about her essay and were proud of her. But the most surprising moment came 2 weeks later. Maya was at her locker after school when someone approached her. It was Mrs. Henderson. Maya froze. She hadn't seen her former teacher since that day in the principal's office. Mrs. Henderson looked different somehow. Smaller. More humble. "Maya, I know I'm probably the last person you want to see," Mrs. Henderson said quietly, "but I wanted to tell you something. I've been working with the diversity consultants, taking classes, reading books. I've learned so much about my own biases and blind spots, and I wanted to say thank you." "Thank me?" Maya asked, confused. "Yes, you could have just quietly transferred out of my class. You could have just accepted the unfair treatment and moved on, but instead you spoke up. You made me see something about myself that I desperately needed to see. You made me uncomfortable, and that discomfort led to growth. Real growth." Mrs. Henderson's eyes were wet with tears. "I've been teaching for 20 years and I thought I was a good teacher. But I was hurting students without even knowing it. You stopped me from hurting more students. You gave me a chance to become better. So thank you." Maya didn't know what to say. Part of her was still angry about all the months of unfair treatment, but part of her could see that Mrs. Henderson was genuinely trying to change. "I hope you can forgive me someday," Mrs. Henderson said, "but I understand if you can't. What I did to you was wrong and I have to live with that." "I'm not sure I can forgive you yet," Maya said honestly, "but I can see that you're trying to be better. That's something." Mrs. Henderson nodded. "That's more than I deserve. Good luck with everything, Maya. You're going to do amazing things." She walked away, leaving Maya standing at her locker with complicated feelings. Anger, sadness, but also something that might have been the beginning of healing. The school year ended with a special assembly. Principal Johnson talked about the importance of speaking up when you see something wrong. He didn't mention Maya by name, but everyone knew who he was talking about. The school announced new policies about fair grading and bias training for all teachers. After the assembly, Sarah found Maya in the hallway. "You did this," she said. "You changed the whole school." "We did this," Maya corrected. "You supported me. You believed me. I couldn't have done it alone." On the last day of school, Maya cleaned out her locker. She found her old essay with the C- grade from Mrs. Henderson. She looked at it for a long moment, then threw it in the trash. She didn't need it anymore. She knew her own worth now, regardless of what grade was written on a paper. That summer, Maya attended a leadership camp for students of color. She met other young people who had faced discrimination and found their voices. She shared her story and listened to theirs. She realized that speaking up wasn't just about changing her own situation. It was about being part of a bigger movement toward justice and equality. In August, Maya received her college acceptance letters. She had applied to 10 schools and she got into 8 of them. Several offered her scholarships. She chose a university with a strong journalism program where she could continue developing her voice as a writer. The night before she left for college, Maya's family had a special dinner. Her mother made all of Maya's favorite foods. Her father gave a toast in Spanish that made everyone cry. He talked about how they had come to this country with nothing but hope. The next few weeks were strange for Maya. She moved to Mr. Patterson's advanced English class, and the difference was immediate. Mr. Patterson greeted her warmly on her first day. He pronounced her name correctly. When she raised her hand, he called on her. When she turned in her first essay, he gave her an A and wrote encouraging comments in the margins. "This is excellent work, Maya," Mr. Patterson said after class one day. "Your analysis is sophisticated and your writing is clear. Have you thought about entering some writing competitions?" Maya almost cried right there. These were the words she had been waiting to hear for months. Words that recognized her abilities and encouraged her potential. It felt like being seen for the first time. Meanwhile, Principal Johnson continued his investigation. He interviewed Marcus, Aisha, Carlos, and Sarah. He talked to other students in Mrs. Henderson's class. He reviewed Mrs. Henderson's gradebook and compared Maya's work to other students' work. Every piece of evidence supported what Maya had said in her essay. One afternoon, Maya was called back to Principal Johnson's office. This time, Mrs. Henderson wasn't there. It was just the principal, Ms. Chen, the counselor, and a woman Maya didn't recognize. "Maya, this is Dr. Rivera from the district office," Principal Johnson said. "She's here because your essay has raised some important questions that go beyond just our school." Dr. Rivera smiled at Maya. She was a Latina woman with kind eyes. "Maya, I want to thank you for your bravery. After reviewing the situation, we've decided to make some significant changes. First, your grades will be corrected. We reviewed all your work from Mrs. Henderson's class, and you should have had A's on most assignments. Your transcript will be updated." Maya felt relief wash over her. Her grades would be fixed. Her college applications wouldn't be hurt by the unfair marks. "Second," Dr. Rivera continued, "we're implementing new training for all teachers in the district, training on unconscious bias, cultural competency, and fair grading practices. Mrs. Henderson has volunteered to help develop this training. She wants to use her experience to help other teachers avoid making the same mistakes." "Really?" Maya asked, surprised. Principal Johnson nodded. "Mrs. Henderson has been meeting with diversity consultants and doing a lot of personal work. She realizes that good intentions aren't enough. She needs to actively work against her biases." "There's something else," Dr. Rivera said. She pulled out a paper from her folder. "Your essay was so powerful that Ms. Chen shared it with me with your permission. I shared it with some colleagues. Maya, we'd like to submit your essay to a regional writing competition. The theme this year is social justice. We think you have a real chance of winning." Maya's eyes widened. "A writing competition?" "Yes, the first prize includes a $5,000 scholarship," Dr. Rivera said. "But more importantly, the winning essays are published and shared with educators across the state. Your voice could reach thousands of teachers and help create real change." Maya couldn't believe what she was hearing. What started as a scary decision to tell her truth was turning into something much bigger. "I'd like that," Maya said. "If my story can help others, then yes." Over the next month, Maya worked with Mr. Patterson to polish her essay for the competition. They refined some sections and strengthened her arguments. Mr. Patterson was amazed by her writing skills. "You're a natural writer, Maya," he said. "Have you thought about studying journalism or creative writing in college?" Maya had thought about it. She loved writing. She loved telling stories. And now she understood the power that words could have to change things. The essay was submitted to the competition in March. Maya tried not to think about it too much. She focused on her other classes and spent time with Sarah and her new friends from English class. Marcus, Aisha, and Carlos had all become closer to her after the essay incident. They formed a small group that met at lunch to talk about their experiences as students of color at Lincoln High. One day in April, Maya was in Mr. Patterson's class when someone knocked on the door. It was Principal Johnson, and he was smiling. "Maya, can you come with me for a moment?" he asked. Maya's heart jumped. Was something wrong? But Principal Johnson was smiling, so maybe it was good news. They walked to the principal's office, and when they got there, Maya saw her parents sitting in chairs. Her mother was wearing her cleaning uniform because she had come straight from work. Her father had dirt on his work pants from the fields. They both looked confused and worried. "Mama." "Papa, what's wrong?" Maya asked in Spanish. "Nothing's wrong, mija," her mother said. "The principal called us to come. We don't know why." Principal Johnson gestured for everyone to sit. Dr. Rivera was there too, and she was holding something in her hand. "I have some very good news," Dr. Rivera said, smiling widely. "Maya, your essay won first place in the regional writing competition," Maya gasped. Her mother grabbed her hand. Her father looked confused because he didn't understand all the English words, so Maya quickly translated to Spanish. When he understood, his eyes filled with tears. "That's a $5,000 scholarship," Dr. Rivera continued. "But there's more. The judges were so impressed with your essay that they've submitted it to a national competition. And Maya, some college recruiters have already reached out after reading your work. They want to talk to you about their schools." Maya couldn't speak. She just sat there with tears running down her face. Her mother was crying too, hugging her daughter tight. Her father kept wiping his eyes and saying in Spanish, "I'm so proud. I'm so proud." "Your story matters, Maya," Principal Johnson said. "What you did took tremendous courage. You not only stood up for yourself, but you've helped create change for other students. We've already seen a difference in how teachers interact with students. They're more aware, more careful, more fair." The news spread through the school quickly. Students came up to Maya in the hallways to congratulate her. Even students she didn't know smiled at her and said they had heard about her essay and were proud of her. But the most surprising moment came 2 weeks later. Maya was at her locker after school when someone approached her. It was Mrs. Henderson. Maya froze. She hadn't seen her former teacher since that day in the principal's office. Mrs. Henderson looked different somehow. Smaller. More humble. "Maya, I know I'm probably the last person you want to see," Mrs. Henderson said quietly, "but I wanted to tell you something. I've been working with the diversity consultants, taking classes, reading books. I've learned so much about my own biases and blind spots, and I wanted to say thank you." "Thank me?" Maya asked, confused. "Yes, you could have just quietly transferred out of my class. You could have just accepted the unfair treatment and moved on, but instead you spoke up. You made me see something about myself that I desperately needed to see. You made me uncomfortable, and that discomfort led to growth. Real growth." Mrs. Henderson's eyes were wet with tears. "I've been teaching for 20 years and I thought I was a good teacher. But I was hurting students without even knowing it. You stopped me from hurting more students. You gave me a chance to become better. So thank you." Maya didn't know what to say. Part of her was still angry about all the months of unfair treatment, but part of her could see that Mrs. Henderson was genuinely trying to change. "I hope you can forgive me someday," Mrs. Henderson said, "but I understand if you can't. What I did to you was wrong and I have to live with that." "I'm not sure I can forgive you yet," Maya said honestly, "but I can see that you're trying to be better. That's something." Mrs. Henderson nodded. "That's more than I deserve. Good luck with everything, Maya. You're going to do amazing things." She walked away, leaving Maya standing at her locker with complicated feelings. Anger, sadness, but also something that might have been the beginning of healing. The school year ended with a special assembly. Principal Johnson talked about the importance of speaking up when you see something wrong. He didn't mention Maya by name, but everyone knew who he was talking about. The school announced new policies about fair grading and bias training for all teachers. After the assembly, Sarah found Maya in the hallway. "You did this," she said. "You changed the whole school." "We did this," Maya corrected. "You supported me. You believed me. I couldn't have done it alone." On the last day of school, Maya cleaned out her locker. She found her old essay with the C- grade from Mrs. Henderson. She looked at it for a long moment, then threw it in the trash. She didn't need it anymore. She knew her own worth now, regardless of what grade was written on a paper. That summer, Maya attended a leadership camp for students of color. She met other young people who had faced discrimination and found their voices. She shared her story and listened to theirs. She realized that speaking up wasn't just about changing her own situation. It was about being part of a bigger movement toward justice and equality. In August, Maya received her college acceptance letters. She had applied to 10 schools and she got into 8 of them. Several offered her scholarships. She chose a university with a strong journalism program where she could continue developing her voice as a writer. The night before she left for college, Maya's family had a special dinner. Her mother made all of Maya's favorite foods. Her father gave a toast in Spanish that made everyone cry. He talked about how they had come to this country with nothing but hope.